national sales manager. Then once the national sales manager, well, they turn it over to the marketing department. And then they turn it over to the quality department. I said, are you kidding? How long does this take? He said, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks. I said, let's call the general manager of the division right now and the quality manager and get them on the phone and just tell them they got a big problem. Okay? In other words, how much are we in touch? I did after that was de-layered the whole organization, knocked out a bunch of layers because I couldn't stand all these layers of management and all these processes which were getting in the way. You know, it was putting in a bureaucratic machine that actually kept us from doing the job. And so how do we get the information? At a policy, if anyone sees a quality problem, they have to call the corporate quality executive right now, today. It has to be reported. And that has to be reported up to me and to the vice chairman, the medical doctor. But you learn a lot by seeing what's going on, okay? And you guys are very much at risk for defective food coming in your stores. You know that. You're dealing with fresh food every day, and all you have to do is poison a few people, right? And the word's all over the country. 3 people poisoned in a Whole Foods store in Rhode Island or, Minnesota. That word's all over the country. It's instant, right? You don't have time for tomorrow's newspaper to come out to deal with the story. PR people don't have time. That gets reported out in the local newspaper. It goes viral. It's all over. And it will happen. You shouldn't assume it could happen. It will happen sometime. So the question is, how are you going to deal with it? When Medtronic has a quality problem, it's reported that somebody died from one of our products. It's probably true. How do we know? Do we say, oh, doctor, you didn't handle that correctly? No. So how do you deal with that? And I think having the, if you will, the wherewithal, that kind of interaction, that closeness in your team formation to be really close to what's going on so that you can build the enterprise as it grows. So I think talking and take your question. You tell me what you do, John?
Yeah, actually I will. I'm responsible for food safety.
Aha! Very good.
And my question, which I've...
Now, would you say you could never possibly have a food safety problem in Whole Foods in the next 10 years?
I deal with them every single day.
You
We've got about 24 hours to notify the public if there is an event, and we're constantly watching that. So we work in an empowered organization. Mm-hmm. So we have multiple regions and we've got multiple levels of responsibility, and it's difficult to get the message out there that you're talking about. I mean, you're dealing with products, and as a chief executive officer, a chief operating officer, you're actually out there in the field looking at these things, and you're in a position to communicate and get things done. In an empowered organization like ours, it's not that easy. We don't have that connectivity. So my question is, in the absence of a major event, how do you raise awareness in a leadership team, a senior leadership team, in terms of quality? Because it sounded to me like earlier on you mentioned...
We face this at Medtronic, okay? And here's 2 things we did. 3 things we did. One was easy. We used to have an executive committee meeting. I don't know what's going on next door, but a leadership team meeting once a week, Monday morning, 10 o'clock. And I'd meet with the president and the vice chair before that, and we'd have a meeting. Number one issue. And the officer comes in and talks about all the quality problems we've had. He's dealing with, he's wrestling with. Because we had the FDA, they could shut us down any time. This is tough, really tough. They didn't like one little thing in our manufacturing processes, even though no one had been harmed. So we put that up and we talked about the quality issues. We didn't talk about finance first. When I go to the Exxon board, you may think it's kind of weird because at Medtronic we never worried about employee safety because we never had any employee safety problems in the 13 years I was there. I never heard of it. Exxon, one thing Tillerson talked about, first thing he talks about in every meeting, the employee safety record. Spills. They just acquired a company in Fort Worth. Not surprisingly, it's a startup company. They have a poorer record of employee safety and poorer record of spills. You know what I mean? Exxon had a fabulous industry-leading record. Now all of a sudden, how are we going to get this, they just aren't disciplined enough. It's a less mature company. They don't have the systems. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they're a bad company. They're a good company. They're really important, but they don't have the disciplines. And how do you get those? But you talk about it First thing you do, it's got to be top of mind for everyone. For the chief financial officer, for the head of human resources. It's not just for the people in your end of the business. Everyone's got all the reason why you got to deal with it, because you could say, well, that's not my region. It's not. No, it could happen to any one of us at any time. And I'll give you an Exxon example. What's the worst thing happen is spills, right? Anyone heard about Macondo, about the Gulf? Even aware that petroleum blew up, all these people sitting out on a rig in the Gulf? So the Exxon people, we just had them board meeting the next day. They came in and laid out 38 that had gone wrong. Like, for instance, we're building this protection for the well, and the cement has cracks in it, and told the contractor Halliburton to get the heck off the job, we're going ahead, okay? Rather than fixing cracks. If you were building a new building and you had cracks in your steel girders, I hope you wouldn't keep building the building. I hope you'd stop and get it fixed and do whatever it took. But they did. They went ahead. So we're talking about this, and then we go up to Canada this summer, and we see everything they've got, all the commitment to employee safety, just unbelievable way up in the northern part, Fort McMurray, Canada. Unbelievable, all the things they've done to protect the birds so birds can't get anywhere near the tailings. And okay, hundreds of millions of dollars spent. Okay, the day I left, okay, something happened in the Yellowstone River where a big rock or something came, burst a pipe, and there's leakage. I was talking to the CEO about it yesterday. Okay, so bad stuff. I said, I wish it had been called the Red River. Why didn't it have to be called the Yellowstone River? It didn't go through Yellowstone, but still, they put 1,000 people on the ground. They're going around clipping grass to get any of the oil out, so the birds and the habitat can be restored. They still haven't figured out what the problem is. They're finally getting to the root cause of the problem. But it's really interesting. So bad things can happen to good people. And you got to get out of your mind that we're so good. That's what we thought of Medtronic. We're so good, this couldn't happen to us, like a church. We'd never have a problem in our church. The minister having a relationship with the choir minister, the head of the choir, actually think bad things happen. But that's what happened, and we went into denial. So you will have quality problems. The worst thing you have, it's in denial. So the second thing we did at Medtronic, okay, is we put in this procedure where it used to be that, well, we aren't sure, we haven't seen this problem before, let's let the engineers analyze it. We'll give them, 90 days to analyze it, and they do need time. But we said, and we doctor had this problem where we had batteries failing. We said, gee, doctor, you're the first person that's ever had this problem. And then you go to a medical meeting, you start talking to your buddies, and he's got a problem, and she's got a problem, you got the same problem. And then you start calling, you're really mad now because you didn't tell me the truth. So you call the engineers, they don't take your call. Now you're really mad. And so, it became a firestorm. Medtronic lost half its market share. It went from 65% of the U.S. pacemaker market to 30%. Okay? Just lost it all because everyone lost confidence in the company to tell the truth. It wasn't the quality problem that was the problem. It was the denial of the quality problem. So that's what your challenges are. See, it's not having the problem. Like Exxon had the problem in the Yellowstone River. You don't deny that. You go to work on it. You do everything you can to fix it and make it right. We used to send people into people's homes to say, I'm sorry what happened, that your product didn't work. How can we help you? Can we compensate you for your loss? What can we do to help? Just long before there was a lawsuit. And yes, were we admitting liability? Yes, we were. I said, I'll take the liability suit, let them come back and sue. I want to do the right thing by the patient. We're going right into the home, and we're never going to blame the doctor. So the second thing was make sure that any one problem was venerated right up to the top, and we were honest and we owned it. The third thing we did, which was really tough for Medtronic, was we had all these different products, different models come out, but they have to last forever. So we went into the hospitals and collected the data at 50 leading hospitals, and we published this every 3 months on how long these products lived, when the battery life was short, when the leads failed, if it got to high, 5 years, the criteria is 95%, 5 years a lead had to last. Well, maybe it fell below that. Then we had to recall the product. But we published all this. Our competitors use it against us. They said, okay, see the problems they're having Medtronic with a 6972 lead, or they're having problems with this particular battery? Look at the problems they got. I said, fine. Where's your report? Why don't you publish ours? So it's our honesty with the doctors and ultimately with the patient. So they could check out, I'm going to get this. What's the quality history of this product? It's been out for 7 years. What's the quality history? And so I think those are kinds of things we did to kind of put it up so it's top of mind, not just for the quality department. So you can't look at quality being food safety being the responsibility of the people involved in food safety. You got to look at it as everyone's job, because anyone who's handling stock in the back room, the fish smells bad. It may be bad, and they can't just put it on the shelf. It's discolored. We gave our production people the capacity to shut the line down because the product was discolored. Turned out there was no problem with the product, but they still had the authority to do it because we wanted to know. Because I felt so vulnerable. I felt so vulnerable, like things had gone I wouldn't even know about. If I know about them, we can deal with them, right? And by the way, we had a thing in Medtronic where I used to say, you never get fired here for making a mistake, but you will get fired for covering one up. So, because I'm not clairvoyant, we can't know about that. So if you see a problem and you don't flush that up, you'll lose your job. If you see a problem, we got a lot of smart people in the company. We'll get the best people around the table to figure it out. If we don't, we can go out and hire them, bring them in, academic consultants or something. But, we'll bring in the best people. We know how to solve the problem if we know about it. We can't solve any problem we don't know about. So the worst thing I feared was people would cover it up. You never know about it until it was too late. And then it took on a life of its own. Yes?
Hi, I'm Patricia Act. I'm the coordinator for the global office HR, which we call team member services here. So a question I have for you is, we're growing a lot as a company. We're fortunate enough that we're doing well. And with that comes a lot of opportunities for leadership. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, a lot of times people tend to promote those that are really great technicians, but not always great leaders.
Right.
So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are about what are the hallmark qualities that you look for in choosing people that are kind of ripe for leadership?
It's very simple. Being real, being authentic, people that are honest, open, forward kind of people. I have a personal thing, I don't deal well with people that are deceptive. I tend to trust everyone, but if you lie to me, or if you're intentionally deceptive, not like a little white lie, like, sorry, I can't come to dinner Saturday night because I got to go out somewhere, and it turns out you just want to be home with your family. That's a white lie. I'm telling you about lie to me. Or you're intentionally deceptive. I can't deal with it. And so I look for people that are honest, that are open, that are real, that are straightforward kind of people, and who can be themselves, okay? Not trying to be something else, not trying to say, oh, I'd like to be like Jack Welch, like all the people at GE were, you're trying to emulate someone else. You can't be someone else. You have to be yourself. And so I think more people, think about the best leader you've ever worked for. What were the qualities that person had? If they could be that honest, open person, even if they were critical of you, gave you honest feedback, they're being real and have an honest conversation. So that's what I look for in people. And you find, in every organization, you find certain types of people. First of all, never look at an organization chart and try to figure out who's got the power. You got to go around and talk to people to find out who the informal leaders are. They're the one people look to. That's why when newcomers come into a company, say they hire a CEO from outside in some company, they don't get it because they don't know who those people are. So you need to venerate, if you will, bring up those informal leaders. Not necessarily promote them, like that serial innovator at Medtronic who's had so many great ideas, influences so many people, may not be the next head of engineering. They may be the worst head of engineering. So you don't necessarily promote them to a job they can, but find their sweet spots and where do they really, where's their leadership being most effective? What turns them on? And we have the idea of the sweet spot, which is your motivations. What turns you on? Where are your passions? What do you really love to do? What are you really good at? And if we can help guide people into jobs like that, they'll become really good leaders. If you're doing something that they don't really love, like I was in my Honeywell days, or they aren't really good at it, you can help them grow, but only to a point, And so I think we can guide people more to their sweet spots. Then you can find leaders can really blossom. Like it's a cliche like sounding, but it's bloom where you're planted, Grow up and do what you do really well, and you can really bloom and have a big impact on people. And so I think you all are going this way, but we need to finish the important titles. I know you even have L's this and L that, and I'm not even comfortable with that. Just the idea that people are different. We're all part of the same team. We just have different roles on the team. I coached youth soccer for 13 years. you have a person whose job it is to play goal, and a person play defense, another person in the midfield, and other people up front score the goals. Okay, now the best defender may not be the best goal scorer, so we each have to find the key is how do you get the right people in the right positions on the field and honor all those. Just because the person scoring the goal doesn't mean they're the hero. Maybe the person saved the goal, that's a hero, or the person was just doing their job. You didn't, unless you understood the game, you didn't see what a job they're doing. The game, you knew how effective they were. They were the person encouraging everyone out there and helping kind of keep 11 people moving in the right direction at all times. They're the people you look for. So look for those kind of leaders and be shocked at how much great leadership they can grow into. You'll be really shocked. Don't look for people that are fancy, look impressive. Look for the people that really impact other people in a positive way, and they'll grow with you. Questions?
So the other day we were talking about developing our team without being heavy-handed. So can you elaborate a little bit on your idea of how we are developing our future leaders without being too heavy-handed and encouraging that blooming?
Tell me more about being heavy-handed. Give me what would be a negative example of being heavy-handed?
I think a negative example is basically forcing somebody to do a class or go to a conference or something like that to really, we see that they have the potential, they just don't have that confidence or courage themselves.
See, I think you have to go deeper on that. You know, is there something holding you back here? You know?
Who, me? Oh, no.
No. I think that's the conversation you want to have. Is there a reason you don't want to go there, that you're feeling that you're holding yourself back? You know, I see the potential in you. And I see some areas where if you could develop some of these soft spots, if you will, you could just take on, you could be such a much better leader. Is there something holding you back? Is there something, maybe you failed at that in school, or maybe there's a fear factor. And if we can have that honest conversation to get down to that, what's that all about? You know, because we all have them. We all have fears. We all have doubts. We all have self-doubts. And if we can get at that, that's part of being real. We can help you. And maybe you do have to take on something that you don't feel comfortable with. Maybe you have to step up and thrown into a situation you feel totally uncomfortable with. Okay, we just acquired this company. We want you to go run it, you know, in Nebraska, you know. And you got to go figure out, well, I'd never run a store. You got to go figure it out, you know. But I'm saying maybe we just have to help people become all they can be. And it's our job to see in people the potential. That's all we have to do. See the potential. Open the door. They used to ask, you know, how can women get ahead in business? I said, it's not very hard how women can get ahead in business. Open the door. You know, there are a lot of talented people. Just give them the opportunity. And I think that's what we want to do with our high potential people, is give them those opportunities, okay, and open the door for them and help them get guided along the path so they're in the thing where they can use their potential to the greatest degree. Does that make sense or not? Okay? So I guess the big risk we have is, you know, the thing that I don't see this happening here so much, it really gripes me, is people judge people by their resume, you know, or their experience, or their title. You gotta look beyond all that. Doesn't matter. You ever been interviewed by somebody who's kind of looking at your resume and say, oh, what about this and what about that? Why'd you go there? You got to get beyond all that. Find out who the essence of the person is and draw that out. Yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up on that question, because I think that as a COO or as the top leader, you can definitely have that influence. Can you give any advice on maybe helping influence other leaders, either peers or your senior leadership, to kind of embrace more of that? And any ideas and stuff that you've done with that?
Yeah, you have to ask people, what are you doing? How many people have you developed that have gone on to other departments here, other parts of the company, done really well? Because we're going to promote people based on their capacity to develop leaders. Because Whole Foods has this problem. We have 64,000 people. We probably, if we're going to grow to 200,000 or 300,000, we need several thousand leaders. So what kind of job are you doing, or what kind of job are each of you doing to develop more leaders within your organization? We used to have what we called people hoarders. You know, I'm not going to let that person go. And that was a negative as far as I was concerned. Can't get promoted. And we used to have people that made sure there was no successor underneath them. and eventually those people had to move away, must step aside, because they were actually bottling up development of people. So you should be, oh, I want to go to work for you because I know that I'll have a chance to take on more. And then, we had a guy that was a serial developer, ran our neurological business. He came to me one day. He had all the young people, all the high talent people wanting to go to work for him. He said, I'm really worried. The core business, pacemaking, is losing all the key people. They're all coming to us, and I'm worried we got too many of them. Yeah, because the pacemaker people are kind of hoarders. And they said, oh, no, you're disloyal if you go from Part A to Part B. Well, it's all Medtronic, guys. It's all part of the same company. So I think you want to promote and venerate the people developers and reward them. We used to give all kinds of rewards for people developers, a little bonus checks all up in front of a big management meeting like this. Recognize them because you're going to have a real challenge getting enough leaders. I can tell you that right now. And those leaders need the managerial skills, which I haven't been talking about today. The managerial disciplines, they need those. They need the leadership skills. They need both. So I'm not talking about managerial skills. How do you read a balance sheet, or how do you manage costs? How do you manage quality, safety? But I'm talking about the qualities of leadership. And so how do we get enough of those people? I don't know how many people are that are actually in leadership roles of one kind or another in a store, but there got to be a lot of them if you really expand. See, you don't have a cookie-cutter formula. If you take Target has basically a cookie-cutter formula. They need a lot of leaders too, but it's still a cookie-cutter formula. Every Target store is the same. It's always the same, and so there's not a lot of empowerment. There is empowerment for one of the customers, but in terms of what you do, it looks pretty much, that's a lot easier thing to replicate. In your case, you're replicating a lot of creativity. That's much harder to do. It gives you a more dynamic environment, but it's much harder to do. Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
You talked earlier about the need, whenever you're in a situation where there's a conflict of some kind or people have competing agendas, that you resolve that by being authentic and looking toward your true values. Well, we have 7 core values here, and there can be times where there's an issue on the table and people go back to the values to try to figure out the best solution for it. But there can be situations where 2 different core values are competing with each other.
Right.
So what is your guidance in terms of, well, then how do you decide which one rules?
Yeah, what's your hierarchy of those values?
Yeah.
Okay? Well, mine is very simple. And in virtually every business, certainly here, customer is first. So the customer value is the one that has to pertain. We like to grow the enterprise. We'd like to have a great team. We'd like to all have fun, on and on and on. Like to have great quality. It's what is in the customer's best interest, because that should be the predominant or prevailing value. Okay? So even, I was giving the example of Starbucks, of how they put a machine between barista and the employee. See, there, they didn't really value the customer. You see what I mean? They did, but it was a trade-off, because they actually were valuing the customer. They were making a trade-off between speed and efficiency and the relationship. And so in that case, I think the customer relationship should dominate. Unless you want to be like Walmart, unless your goal is to have lowest cost in every product in the store, then you can get away with a low service model where the customer is kind of just pushed around the store and it's more like an assembly line type process. But you're not going that way. You can't go that way. That's not who you are. You couldn't go that way if you wanted to. Somebody came in here and tried to do that, it'd be a disaster. So then I think that's the value that has to prevail. Okay? And so when you promote someone, is this person really customer oriented? Or are they just a top performer making the numbers? And you always have, you say, they told me last night you don't have any jerks here. Well, that's nice. I'm glad to hear that, because at Medtronic we did. What's a jerk? A jerk is a person that puts their own... What? A jerk is a person who looks good to top management, who makes the numbers, but people hate to work for him. Okay? And I found I couldn't promote people at Medtronic based on my evaluation of the people. I had to get feedback, whether it's 360 feedback or human resource find out. I made a rule. I'll never promote anyone unless I found out how their people feel about it. Because I'd say, oh, this person looks really good to me. So, yeah, it looks good to you, Bill, but he's got 40% turnover in his department. Oh, and so you better find that out in advance, because I made some big mistakes doing that, and promoted some people to roles, and everyone said, didn't know about this guy? Why didn't you ask? Why don't you ask us? We'll tell you. And if you have enough of those people, see what they're looking at is they're not looking at the person you promoted. They know what they are. They're looking at me. Say, what? You tell us all this stuff about empowerment, all these good values, and you're promoting this guy? It doesn't represent our values here? So what's that say not about his values? We know what his values are. What does it say about Bill George's values? That was the worry. Okay, that was the concern, is that I would lose trust of people because if we put people around you that are different, than what you say your values are. So I think that's very critical. Yes?
Hi, I'm Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. Well, tell me what area of the business you're in, Kathy?
A global cheese buyer.
Okay, very good. I love your cheese.
Thank you. We love you as a customer.
Will somebody help me if I want a certain kind of cheese?
Absolutely.
Will they?
Anyone in this room, right, can help you.
If I want Humboldt Fog, will they help me?
Absolutely.
I'm talking about in the store.
Yes, and Mary Keene was standing right there less than 3 months
Because
ago.
I'm willing to pay a little more money for my Humboldt Fog, but you got to, because that's what my wife likes.
Well-
She doesn't want just more brie, because I got so much brie.
Well, we have the best price no matter what, so you can
Oh, you
get
do?
it from us.
The lowest
Absolutely.
price?
In every store.
So I'm just buying because it's cheap. I thought I was buying because it was quality.
It's both.
Okay.
And it's not cheap, it's the best value for the quality.
But I also need help because I don't understand all these fancy French and Italian cheeses.
Fantastic, you've come to the right place.
Will somebody help me?
Absolutely.
That's what I want. That's why I go to Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I think part of
I can
even
get
when-
all that cheddar cheese from Wisconsin.
which is good cheese as well.
Those cheeseheads next to us in Minnesota, I can get that cheese, anywhere.
Right.
But I want to know somebody help me.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding about this.
No,
Same with wine, by the way.
I know. We're here for you.
I know you're not the wine buyer, but
No, but
this
we'll
matters.
help you. Any of us can help you with wine too. So,
Okay.
all right.
Thank you. This is not a joke. I mean, this is real stuff. No, you guys laugh, but this is what customers are thinking about in your stores. Guys, if you want to buy cheddar cheese, you just go to Safeway and get your cheddar cheese. I want to be somewhere somebody can help me get the kind of cheese. We're having friends over tonight, and I want to have some nice cheeses.
That's perfect. How many guests are coming with you?
12.
Well, absolutely. We'd like to recommend 4 different selections, and this is why.
And I want some nice wines, too, because, in Cambridge, there are no good wine stores, so I want to go to Whole Foods.
Oh, absolutely. We have a store at River Street. They'd be glad to have
Yes,
you.
I go there all the time.
Well, also, I think you're using Starbucks as an example is interesting because never once did you mention the quality of the product, too. And I think they made all these other decisions, but it also impacted the quality of what was being served.
Right.
So I think, there are these static things that you can measure, and then there are things that are the intangibles. And for us, it's always, for me as a buyer, having the best quality and then being able to.
Can I give you a creative idea about Starbucks? I had dinner with a friend of mine who helped Howard Schultz get Starbucks going. Okay, and he told me the whole story how he got a call from the CFO and said we got to go from 50 stores in Europe to 500. He said it can't be done. That's how they got to these big fancy machines. But they lost sight of. Howard understood this. Howard understands. This guy explained this to me, and I confirmed this with Howard. They're not actually selling coffee. Did you know that? You know what they're selling? Is a coffee break. Actually, their coffee's not all that great, I'm serious. It's not all that great.
Yes, we know.
I have a place I can get a lot. They're selling a coffee break. So it's a place where you can go and take a coffee break. You can work on your computer. Let's have a little conversation. You can even have a little, let's discuss how we're doing here. What can we do to work together better? We're having this conflict. It's interesting, and so that way of thinking about it, that's the way Steve Jobs thought about Apple. He was a jerk most of the time. God bless his soul. But, most of the time. But he was always saying about how can you create something you want as a customer you don't even know you want. Do you see what I mean? How can you delight the customer in such a way? That's what Earl Bach was pushing us in Medtronic. We're not just trying to meet our doctors' needs. We want to meet their wants, and they don't even know what they want. You know what I mean? So that's what you're doing with cheese. Go ahead. Ask your question. Sorry.
So I'm glad to know you like Humboldt Fog, though. That's fantastic. And good selection. So my question is, you've been with a number of different companies and you've talked about culture and certainly larger organizations than ours. And one of the things we struggle with is keeping that culture because the culture evolves. the culture evolves as you grow with the people, the new sites, what you take in, what you learn from.
It does.
Even when we opened in Scotland, it was
And you bring in
totally different.
wild oats and,
Exactly. So the question is there a methodology that you found at a very high growth rate in terms of incubating that culture? Because the way we are geared and set up, we don't invest a lot in certain things, and we don't invest a lot in marketing. The philosophy is very different around that, and our training organization is a different level. We don't build to it; we build and then we service it around our G&A. So, have you found anything that you felt really worked, because you've been exposed to a number of different types of environments around creating and sustaining that culture?
yes.
Any insights that you could share with us that you felt have worked better through that rapid growth?
Yeah. Most important thing. By the way, this works in financial services. It works in any industry I can think of, is having culture carriers. Who are the culture carriers at Whole Foods? I knew who they were at Medtronic. I could name all the culture carriers. Some of them are a little different, but they were so passionate about the culture. Carried that culture. You could just read it with them, and they spread that word. We had a woman, it was, hard to handle, but I tell you, she handled the doctors so well. Carried that culture of Medtronic to the most important doctors in the country, in the U.S., and she was fantastic. Nancy Stevenson was her name. And she had a few quirks, but we all have quirks, right? But she was so good at that. Who are the culture carriers? We weren't going to promote Nancy to vice president of marketing, because she would have died there. She would have been awful. Not systems oriented. She was not organized. She was not just. But she was a culture carrier. Who are those culture carriers that say, that's not right that you're doing that? Honestly, can I just be straight with you? That's not the way we do things at Whole Foods. And then get them out into the stores. Get them out into these new areas. Got to carry that. I met a guy named Luis who lives in Fort Lauderdale. Say he's got a lot of Hispanic people and he wants a lot of new foods. Okay, is that going to be consistent with the Whole Foods culture? Do you see what I mean? If he's going to tailor his stores to that. And that's just hypothetical example. It's not necessarily real, but I'm just saying. But to get more of those people out there, because you got to do it. Otherwise, you're going to lose it. And if you can do a big acquisition, they're going to inevitably think differently than you do. How do you embrace it? And then you got to get your senior management out telling the story. I felt my job as CEO was more to, if you will, spread the Medtronic culture. Particularly when we acquired, one year we acquired a whole lot of companies. And I felt I spent the whole year going out and seeing all these people, not just at the head shed of these companies, but, talking to their people, and yes, in their factories, but all around the world, meeting with their people and going into working with their doctors and their customers. They had different sets of doctors. They were in spine or in neuro or in, in ENT, otolaryngology, and so they were in different fields. But I think to have those people who can really spread that word, because you won't. The best way to spread a culture is by one-to-one, one to small groups, word of mouth. I think you can go and put a cultural change program in, but then those cultural change consultants you just hired from outside the company go away, and the culture change program goes away. And it's got to come from, it's got to come from the essence of the people. It can't just come from top management, but I think it's done through people. And so, but no, you not know who they are. Human resource should have a whole list. They don't share with anyone, but they know who they are. And they're moving them around, and they're promoting them, and they're moving them out there, and people getting out, so they're really interacting. And maybe transfer a few of them into the newly acquired company in Boulder, Colorado, to make sure that word goes through. That's part of the integration. Yes, you want the auditors, and you want the accountants to get in there and get the books right, and you want to put the human resource system, you want to put the quality systems in, but also you want to have some culture carriers that are there when all those people go back to Austin. And who's bringing that along? It happens every day. I mean, it happens, and they got to be in stores too. Yes?
So we're broken down into all these regions, as you know. Do I even need this? I'm pretty loud. It's for the camera. All these different regions, as you know, and the regions operate sort of as their own little, fiefdoms, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
And very autonomous. And there's a lot of best practice sharing going on within the regions.
Mm-hmm.
But with this growth, opportunity that we have coming, do you have any experience or have you seen any instance of a company who had some tactics in place for best practice sharing across all levels of the company that really drove their business model and their experience with their customer forward?
Mm-hmm. I wish I had something really sophisticated. I don't. I just know that you got to move people around region to region, and you got to get people to share. You got to have people. You all have to spend time in those regions, in the stores, interacting with people all the time. And if I would start with your calendar on January 1st, take your time off for the holidays and actually mark out all the different places you're going to go in the year. That's how I marked out. I gowned up and saw 700 procedures when I was at Medtronic, between 700 and 1,000 in 13 years. I only could do that and say, okay, these 2 days I'm in LA, these 2 days this is the day I'm in Boise, and the next day I'm in Salt Lake. And I just marked out that's where I'm going to be. And I just tell people I'm coming, nothing fancy, just put me with your top doctors and let's ride with the salesperson and see what's going on. I don't want any fancy dinners. I don't want to hardly even meet with the management. In fact, we had a policy when we went overseas, and not more than an hour could be spent in business meetings, and the rest of the time was with customers. So I've gone to Japan, going to Tokyo, 1 hour. That's it. Now we're going out to see Japanese doctors. I want to see if what you're telling, I can read the numbers. I don't need you to sit up and spend 40 minutes presenting a bunch of numbers to me. I can read those on my computer flying over there. But I think getting people out in and getting this cross-rough between the regions so people are talking, I worry more in some ways, less about the regional autonomy and more, and I do more about the acquired companies and how you get them in. But we've got to move people around from region to region to get the ideas, to get that sharing. They can come to a meeting like this, maybe that's what they're doing next door, but they can move around. They can come here, but maybe it won't get carried back into the actual practice. It's the day-to-day that I worry about. Your business is an on-the-ground business. Okay, Apple's is not. Apple's is one that's determined from the headship. Your business is an on-the-ground business with hundreds of thousands of interactions every day. And so they've got to have people on the ground that are really sensitive to this and that really know what they're doing. And that's where this interaction. And I would actually have you all go out and actually take jobs in the field and have people in the field come in here. We did that a lot at Medtronic. Some people that were our best people in the field were actually not comfortable coming into what we call a home office job. They weren't comfortable. But they grew a lot and learned a lot. And maybe their best place was in the field and they went back out after a year and a half, 2 years. But they at least grew a lot. And but I think it's really important to learn the whole of the business because controls are, I don't like the word controls, but you got to have a set of controls. He's got to have food safety standards. You got to have accounting control. You can't have multiple accounting systems. You just simply can't. Everyone's got to. No. Serious. In all seriousness, I worked for 10 years of my life with a conglomerate called Litton Industries. Okay, it had 133 divisions. Can you believe this? 130. It were everything from building ships to Stouffer frozen foods to you wouldn't believe all the stuff they did. Okay, 133 accounting systems. The place collapsed. Eventually, it just imploded. It didn't explode. It imploded. It imploded of its own weight. You know why? It had a bunch of numbers guys, unlike your company, looking at numbers on top. The numbers didn't bear any relationship to reality because everyone had their own chart of accounts. But I think you need to have those controls in place. I don't want to go to a new store you're putting into Keystone and have the cash registers not work as well as they do at the River Street store or the store in San Francisco. And so I want to know that those systems work. And they enable, that's why this upside down, they enable your employees to be more effective. You see, you're making their jobs easy. If you think of your job as to make the job of the frontline people, and you can multiply. And so, boy, great. When you acquire my company, my little, interesting stores, I got 4 stores in Omaha, boy, I'm really excited. You guys are coming in because you give me your systems. Now, their first reaction won't be that. They'll say, oh my gosh, we're trying to run our store and they're trying to change us. But somehow they got to realize, hey, these systems are really better. They have a better people system than we do. Oh, now I don't have to worry about payroll. See, people on the store level shouldn't have to worry about any of that stuff. You know what I mean? Last thing you want to worry about, employee health care. You got the world's greatest employee health. That should be like manna from heaven for people that you acquire. But do you have a payroll system? you know, that's so good that people say, this is great. I don't have to worry. I don't want to worry about payroll. You know, I want to worry about my customers. So what you do, it frees them up to think about that, you know. And yeah, there's some products we're going to have to change, to upgrade to Whole Foods quality standard. That ought to all be discussed with John and the acquisition team in advance. So that's the most important thing. I never spend time negotiating numbers with people. I would say, do we agree on the mission and the values? Here are the food safety. Here are the standards of foods we have. Do we agree on that? Now, we realize your store is different than ours. Okay, we're going to take X period of time, and X is pretty short. We're going to upgrade it to, we're going to bring it to Whole Foods level. Just like the excellent story I was telling you about, we got to get the acquired company up to our employees. We know it's not there. I mean, it would be a shock if you acquired some little person with a, you know, half dozen or a dozen stores that they had the same standards you had, wouldn't it? I mean, it would be virtually impossible. How do you help them? And I had people call me and say, get your auditors out of here. I don't have time for them. I said, oh, yes, you do. We're going to make your job easy. We don't want to come in and audit your books a year from now and find out a lot of snakes. Pull up this cover and there's snakes coming out of the ground, you know, because we haven't done it right. Let's get it all done right now. Let's get it behind us. Move on. Other question? We do. I got time. You guys got to go?
One more question, but
you guys have to go?
Reiterate that accounting.
I don't have to go. I got lots of time.
You got a lot of time.
In the back, sir. We got two more, and we got one up here.
Two more quick questions.
Wait.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I work with a lot of our key suppliers, and I wanted to know from perspective from different industries, what are some of the key points in managing good relationships with your key suppliers?
Isn't it a privilege to work with Whole Foods?
I'm sorry?
Isn't it a privilege
Yes.
for me as one of your suppliers to work with you? What a privilege
We remind them all
it
the
is,
time.
because we set such high standards. You know, we can't make you exclusive, but we know that you work with the best, and we want. And you, I'm sure as a supplier that supplier wants the best thing for the ultimate customer, and Whole Foods sets the standards to help us get there. We will help upgrade you to that standard. We will ensure, the standards of all your foods. And so, isn't it great? But we're trying to, we're not Walmart. We're not going to build a relationship with you for 3 years and cut you off overnight over 1/10 of a cent. We just don't operate like that. If your costs are too high, we'll come in there and work with you to try to figure out how to get them down, because we can't afford to pay those prices for your coffee anymore, or whatever the product is you're buying. But think of it like that. Like, you're dealing with the best. Isn't this great? Okay? And that's the way I would work with suppliers. But you're building a long-term. That's what the Japanese did. That's why the Japanese killed the U.S. automakers. Anyone ever supplied General Motors? My father, once he was president of the Automobile Supply Company, they just come in and cut him off. That's the way they did. They just cut him off. Zero. They said, oh, we had a cutback in production, and we're going to put it all in-house, and so we're just cutting you off. That's why I used to work a lot with Sears. Man, it was brutal work with Sears. It was just awful. And they would never be honest with you, never tell you the truth. Japanese have a very different attitude. You're part of the family. Are your suppliers part of the Whole Foods family? You part of the whole network here. We want to bring you into this great culture and make you feel just as much, not quite as much a part of the family as our employees, but pretty close. You know what I mean? So that you feel that it's such a privilege to work with you guys. And for a supplier, there's nothing better, I can tell you, there's nothing better than working with a growing company, to supply a growing company. If you want to be successful, you find to work with a growing company. That's who you want to work with. And so if they don't get that, then they're very good suppliers. But you're offering them a great gift, is the way I'd look at it, because you're offering a relationship. See, what's happened in the world, that's like John Mackey's had this debate with Milton Friedman. The whole world of economists and Wall Street and all that, they went to a transaction model. Like you do a deal, it's all about the transaction. When you acquire Wild Oats, it's not about the transaction, okay? It's about creating something better. It's about the vision of creating something. It's not about a transaction. That's why you say, it doesn't matter if the stock price is up 50, $1 or $2. That's not what matters. Do the cultures come together? And so we can get the best of both. And the same with your suppliers. Do you work together? It's not about whether you get that last penny of the goods. You may want to do that, but you may have to help them do that, but you're not just going to cut them off overnight. And that's why I hated working with Sears. They gave you a lot of volume, but they were so dishonest with us. I don't mean actually unethical. I mean they were just dishonest in their communications. And so you want to work with somebody that can help you become better. And so if you're going to be successful, you want to work with the best. And so that's the way I'd position yourself. Yes, sir. You may get the final question here, so make it a good one.
Wow. Pressure. I wanted, pardon me, if you could just recap the part that you said about maintaining your clarity and your awareness with the small groups and a peer group.
As a human being, as a leader.
Yeah, as part of kind of a self-development.
Well, yeah, he's back to comments I made earlier to the previous group. How do I stay grounded as a human being and as a leader? And by the way, the line between leadership and your humanity is a very thin veil. Don't think of leadership's over here, my daily life's over here. Don't think of it like that. It's a very thin. If you're a good human being, be a good leader. It's not like you have to be like Jack Welch or Steve Jobs. You know, the worst thing you have with Steve Jobs being martyred now as he is everyone's going to start trying to behave like he did. You know, wouldn't that be a disaster? He's a genius. Not many of us are geniuses like that. So he got away with it. I talked to people close in, like Ron Johnson, who ran Apple stores, now running JCPenney, who worked for him. He said, yeah, he was a real jerk, you know, but he had surrounded himself with high EQ people. So how do you stay grounded as a human being and as a leader? Well, you know, you don't get caught up with money, fame, status, power. The only thing I've heard here I don't like is you guys are all 7s and 8s, and I wish you would get that out of your vernacular. I mean, the idea that you have levels. You don't think of it that way? Good. 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 No, but I mean, we're all people trying to do the job. Do you see what I mean? I would ran a meeting. Engineers had as much say as the vice presidents, you know, because the person has the most to contribute to the situation. Well, I think, but as human beings, we have to stay grounded. How do we do that? You need a series of personal practices to keep you grounded. You can't just work 10 hours, 12 hours a day and stay grounded. So you need to have an integrated life. What's that mean? Integrated means you live your life with integrity, so you're the same person on the job, at home, in your personal life, and in your community. You're the same person. And you can have that level of integrity in your life. Integrity comes from the word integral, which is, French word is cœur. It's the heart. It's the heart of who you are. And you lead with your heart, not just with your head. You don't cut yourself off at the neck, but you're a whole human being. How do you stay grounded? Well, you need practices. I don't know what your practices are. I can tell you mine. I meditate 20 minutes twice a day. I like to go take walks around the lake with my wife, and I like to bike, and I like to hike, and I like to jog. And I like to meet with small groups of people, my men's group, my couples group, and other people. I love to mentor people because that keeps me real. Have coffee with younger people I mentor. That I'm not helping them so much as they're helping me stay grounded with what's really important. You stay grounded inside the business by getting out into the stores because that's where the action is. And you don't ever put yourself above people. But you need those practices, and by that you will become a really good leader. I'm confident of it because people will want to work with you. You'll build teams around you. You'll become a really effective leader at what you do. As soon as you start thinking about money, fame, power, glory, and those things, you're going to lose it. Okay? And it can happen not just at the top levels, it can happen at any level. To think you're better than everyone else because you got that big promotion or you got a big bonus. Life is not really about those things. And students get cynical and say, well, you didn't think like that before you were saying, I certainly did. I thought like that when I was 22 years old. So this is not something new. I think you have to stay grounded every day of your life in your relationships. And that's why getting down and playing now with my grandchildren, playing with your children is really important, you know, that they can help keep you real. You know what I mean? And if you get to the point where you have teenage kids, they can keep you pretty real, you know? You see some of you had teenage kids, okay? And that's great. You know, don't wait for your kids to become adults before you build a relationship with them. I was playing with my 3.5-year-old grandson. I've been with him 4 of the last 5 weekends, you know? It's great. You know, we were together over Thanksgiving. He's now getting very comfortable with me. He doesn't need his mommy and his daddy. You know, no, but you got to build, you know, how do you do it? You get down and build Lego blocks. You know what I mean? You read a book, you know, go walking, you go to push them on the swing. I mean, these sound like trivial things. They're real, okay? Just like the things you do inside the company with people are real. And I think that's how you build a great organization. with that authenticity, because then you don't spend a lot of time worrying about politics. The one thing I had a disdain for at Medtronic was people that were politically oriented. We hired some guy from Pfizer, one really talented executive. He ran Europe. I had to call him. I had to sit him down 3 times and say, let's talk. You know, this is not Pfizer. We're not going to be political. You have a lot of talent. You need to stop that behavior. I was pretty blunt. He didn't like it. He did not like me telling him, you need to stop your behavior. Stop showing up at the head office all the time trying to curry favor with people. Get back and do your job. And stop blaming someone else. I had some come to my office. You know, I can't build my part of the world because I don't get the products and people. I said, really? Let's call that person. He was picking on somebody in one of the business. I said, well, let's call him and let's talk to him. That was the last time someone did that. No, I said, why don't you tell him what you just told me? Tell him what you just told me about what terrible job he's doing. Yeah, but. And so I think you do that on the job as well as in your personal life of being real. And get this kind of ideas that some of us have higher level jobs and others kind of out of your head. Yes, you want to do the very best thing you can do. Do that. I always told people, keep your head down and do today's job. I told my sons that. Just do today's job and the promotions will come. I used to not like people that are always looking for the next job. I said, you just got a big job. Go do your job, you know. The opportunities will come. If you do your job really well, people see this. We're not blind here. We know who's doing the job. And so I think that's the way you grow as a person. And you grow every day. It's accumulation of all of it. But you never stop, okay? It's like a flower that blooms. You keep blooming and blooming and blooming. You never stop growing. The only case that flowers stop blooming if you cut it off its roots. The roots are who you are, the deep roots. That's what you're putting down, deep roots. And you bloom from that place. And I think that's how you have, hey, a great job, great career, but more importantly, you have a great life. And at the end of the day, you can look back and say, oh, we made a lot of mistakes. Things don't always go our way, but it was really a great run. You know, we really had a great time taking on those challenging experiences, and we created something really great. Because this may be the very best opportunity you have in your entire life till you're 97 years old. Really make a big difference in the lives of people you work with every day and in your own life. So, thank you.
A token of our appreciation. Yeah, we got some Humboldt fog.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Thank you.
And we'll, of course,
How am I going to get that
we're
home?
going to mail this.
Check it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. That you're spreading. You have a really important mission. My colleague Michael Porter wrote a book called Creating Shared Value. Well, that's what you've been doing here since you founded Whole Foods. You're creating shared value and effect for your society, for your employees, for your customers, for your communities. John had this wonderful debate. First got my attention was Milton Friedman, because I was teaching and I was shocked how people believe this Friedman stuff. He says I don't know him, but I have a lot of respect for his intellect, but I totally philosophy, because he didn't understand how you run a business. You know, you don't run a business just to serve the almighty shareholder. You destroy it. And I have my role model of a company is what used to be a small company, now it's quite a large company, a company called Hewlett-Packard, got $125 billion in revenues. They started out kind of like this company. They had a garage, a couple of guys, Dave Packard. I met Dave Packard in the 60s, you know, late 60s when I was a kid. You know, these guys just wander around, go out to the lab, talk to the people, be in the offices. They're just kind of regular folks, you know. Fly coach, you know, I mean, they were just kind of normal, you know what I mean? And then they came in and changed all that, and they decided they had to bring in some fancy outside leadership that went to Gulfstream 5s, and if you have Gulfstream 5, I don't know, but not that most of you fly it. But they lost the essence. Do you see what I mean? And I think, but it's hard to keep. It can drift away too. There's been some drift at Medtronic away from what the essence of the organization is. So I think your challenge is, how do you, as the organization grows, how do you build it and sustain it and stay on track? Because that's not easy. you had a rough time in '08. In many ways, as tough as that was, it actually was a good learning lesson for all of us, right? That things, you do hit the wall. You do hit tough times. You can't build a company and not hit a tough time. I've worked a lot with Howard Schultz. He had a very tough time at Starbucks and had to go back because they were drifting. See, it's not like someone sits up on top and says, "Oh, we're going to change the culture," But things happen. Now, his case was drift. Here, you had a different circumstance. You hit difficult times. You're going to hit that. Things don't always go your way. We had them in Medtronic. We had problems with the FDA. Oh, that's not who we are. We had a quality problem. People died from our product. We're ashamed. Medtronic's biggest problem was before I went there twice. We almost destroyed the entire company because we went into, now we had quality problems, but that wasn't the problem. We went into denial. Oh, we couldn't do that. We couldn't, we wouldn't create a problem that actually harmed someone. Well, actually we did. And so we kind of in denial. Well, that's just a one case, doctor. You're the only one. And then you talk to your friends, and you find out it's happening a lot. So how does an organization, you see what I mean? How does an organization really stay together? So let me talk to you a little bit about your leadership. Because as the company grows, you can't rely, you're a very empowered culture, but you can't rely just on the people on top. Each of you has to think and act like the person that's running the whole company, that's responsible. So you feel that sense and you spread that sense of the culture, because that's the only way you can sustain, I think, a great culture. And to me, the economists had told us that companies, the essence of a company is making money for the shareholders. It's just strictly nonsense. It's just simply wrong. It's wrong and it doesn't work. Companies are not created to serve the shareholder. They're created to serve the customer. I'm your customer. If you don't serve me, I'm not coming back. And if enough of us don't come back, we have bad experience, you're out of business. You've always seen your favorite restaurant that goes downhill and they say the service is bad and I'm not going back. It's pretty simple. And it's what I said to folks last night. It's the last 3 feet between you and me. And I'm your customer. You're here to serve me. And if you treat me arrogantly, you don't care about me, I pay your high prices because I like the way I'm treated. But I'm not willing to do that, and because I like the food and I like the advice you give me. And if you stop doing that, then I'll just drift away. I'm going to make me a good customer. I'm not going to come and beat you up. I'll just drift away. But if I have that good experience, then I'm telling my friends, hey, this is a place to go. And so why don't you go there? Have you found this place? And that, to me, is the most powerful thing. But how do you keep that essence? Well, I think it really gets down to mission and values of the company. Do all 64,000? Do all 64,000 employees of Whole Foods know, understand, and inculcate the values? It's not about saying, oh yeah, here are the 5 values. I know what the core values are. Here they are. I can reel them off to you like you do in school, like I wrote. It's not about that. When you're making a decision, when you're treating a customer, is that going through the back of your mind? Are you thinking about that? When you make a decision about a supply source, are you thinking about that? When Medtronic makes a decision, are we going to release this product to market? Are we thinking about the mission of Medtronic? Because that's the essence of the company. So let me just give you a little background on that, and because I think it gets down to what I'd like to call 21st century leadership, how we think about leadership. Medtronic was founded by Earl Bach and his brother-in-law, who wasn't really involved, so it's really a one-person band. Earl, in his case, was not a good manager, but he was smart enough to know that, so we'd bring in managers to work with him, one for each kind of decade, shall we say, as the company grew up. But he was a visionary, and he invented the first pacemaker, but he envisioned the whole human body. He's got this diagram of the human body of all the things we can do with medical technology to help the human beings be restored to full life and health. So that became the mission of the company. In fact, when he wrote the mission in 1960, the company was bankrupt. He had founded in 1949. It was basically repairing medical equipment. He invented the pacemaker in 1958, and the company had no money. It never declared bankruptcy because he was way too proud to do that. And he got an injection of $200,000, $100,000 in equity, $100,000 loan from a venture capitalist. They had just passed a new law that said you got venture capital, and he got an injection in 1960. And he said that the 2 venture capitalists who came on the board, that their advice was infinitely more valuable than their money. a guy named Bill Dietrich kind of advised Earl, and they said, Earl, what's the mission of the company? You're working on all these ideas, you got all these great ideas. What's really important? So he went away and wrote the mission of Medtronic. Not one word of that mission has changed to today. It's got a lot of language in it. It says things like, we will create will be the unsurpassed standard of quality, reliability, and service, honesty, and integrity. So everyone knows those words. Those are in the halls, unsurpassed standard, of quality. And yeah, do you violate it sometimes? Yes, you do. But you just violated the mission. You know that you fell short. That one didn't measure up. Does that measure up to an unsurpassed standard? It's not just being good enough. Is it the best? And one of the things in there that I took very seriously was the idea that every employee of the company has a means to share in the company's success. Big challenge when you grow. When you're small, you can figure that out. But as we grew, so we gave everyone stock. We have now got tied up for them in their employee stock ownership plan, but every employee of the company got stock. They were kind of shocked. We had our 50th anniversary and gave everyone 100 shares of stock. They thought we were going to give them $100. We gave them 100 shares of stock, which, had considerable value. But they felt that sense of ownership, And I think that's, how do you bring people into your sphere of thinking about it? And so the mission at Medtronic became paramount. And Earl would walk down the hall and said, have you seen the mission? Do you know the mission? He hands you a little card. Everyone had the mission card. And he would get everyone together, and he would give them a medallion and talk about the mission. Everyone walked away with a medallion. It's kind of like you become almost like a member of a club. You're now really a part of Medtronic. And he would make you feel that way. And I tried to carry that out because that became so important, that sense. And people would put these on their desk, on their workbench, on the factory lines. You could see them, these little medallions. They're bronze medallions. Got one in the back. That became so important in how that was conveyed. So when we had a quality problem, or you decided we're going to release this product to market, you could sit and talk about, honestly, does this measure up to our standards? Because in that field, our field, nothing is perfect. You all strive for perfection. I can tell you, in medical technology, nothing is perfect. I'll give you an example. We had a product called, it was a graft. If people had aortic aneurysms, they had this big bulge here in this part of their body, and blood, it bulk up, and if it burst, you basically died. And even the surgery had a very high mortality. 8% of the people died on the table, and another 15 or 20% had what are called morbidity, or you never fully recovered. So we had a stent graft could go in and actually shrink it. But we put them on the market, and some of the early stent grafts were leaking. There's some leakage of the blood. And that's imperfect, right? And so we came very close to pulling that product off the market. Just as it was going to market, just so we marketed the first 100,000 of them. First 1,000 patients got them. We started getting some of this data back. We sat with our vice chairman, who's a medical doctor, and we looked honestly at it, and we said, we know we can get this better, but it's so much better than the open surgery. Now, were we rationalizing? I don't think so. I think that product today, we could have pulled it, our competitor guide, and pulled it off the market. They had much bigger problems. They didn't disclose them, and 3 of their people went to jail. They covered up their problems. We disclosed everything to the FDA, and we went down and talked to them. We said, we think this product is worthy of keeping on the market. The little leakage is not a big problem, and it can be fixed, and no one's really being harmed by that. But, oh, by the way, here are the results, and now it's a $500 million business. But it's not the $500 million business that's important. What's important is that we really address that issue, and we're creating a new therapy for people that didn't have it. And that's kind of the way innovation takes place in that field. So the first thing I'd like to suggest to you is think about your leadership. That the most important thing we all do is we align people around the values of Whole Foods. How do you gain that alignment? And as you grow, our challenge for all of us, do you feel aligned yourself? You know what your personal core values are. Do you feel aligned with the core values of your job? Because think about it, you spend more time here than you do anything else in your life, right? And if this is inconsistent, if you were working for something where you just didn't believe in what they were doing, why would you devote, I don't care how much money you make, I say this to students, why are you going to give up your life to do something you don't? So can you feel that alignment, and can you convey that sense of alignment with the core values, between personal core values and Whole Foods core values to the work? Because, frankly, if you don't, I think you're better off resigning and go sitting on the beach in Hawaii. I really do, and figuring out where it is you want to devote your life. Because your life goes by pretty darn fast. I'm a little shocked. I was the young guy, right? No longer the young guy. It goes by pretty fast. And if you don't have that sense of alignment, I think you're really losing something. Now, you all talk a lot about empowerment. And by the way, that mission of Medtronic, and I told the story last night, I think I can tell it again, but Medtronic has a holiday party every December and brought in 6 patients come up here, and they sit up here. Now we have a big atrium auditorium where about 4,000 people come and sit. Another 25,000 people are watching on web streaming. So it's a big event. It's compared to the annual shareholders meeting, it's infinitely more important. It's the day when you learn what is Medtronic all about. And I go back to it every year. And it's amazing when people, a mother will stand up and say, you know, because of you, I'm now able to have children. Or I can now play with my grandchildren. Or I had intractable back pain and I couldn't even get down on the floor. You know, I couldn't even walk. Now you've given me life back. That sense of that's what it's really all about. It's not about just making money. It's not about making money yourself. It's not about the doctors. It's about the patients you serve. And we always keep that patient in mind. So do you always keep that customer? I don't care what part of the business you're in. Do you always keep that customer in front of your mind and get that alignment? The second thing is you all talk a lot about empowerment. So I'm not one to come here and tell you you have to empower your workforce. But let me just give you an example of empowerment of Medtronic, and I think it'll bring home the essence of what you're doing here. I was visiting a factory down in Southern California, Irvine, California, makes heart valves. And what they do is they take a pig's heart and they carve that, carve the valve out of a pig's heart. And about 1 out of every 10 pig's hearts produces a valve, has a valve that can be converted into a replacement for the human aortic or mitral valve in your heart for people that have a failed aortic valve. And it's probably more of an art than a science. And certainly in those days it was. We were heavily backlogged. It took 18 months to train new workers. Had a lot of legally immigrated Asian workers in the facility. And I remember I was introduced to the top worker in the facility. It's a woman named Trin. She was from Laos. And I went out and she had all her tools laid out on her bench. And she was the top worker. She outproduced everyone. So I said, Trin, I'm trained as an industrial engineer. I'm really interested in how you do your work. Please explain to me how you can do this and how you can be so productive. She wouldn't look down at her bench. Looked at me, she had this passion in her eyes. She said, Mr. George, let me tell you something. My job is to make heart valves that save someone's life. Okay? And there are no inspectors on this line. I do the final inspection. My criteria, is this valve good enough to go in my father, my husband, or my daughter? And if it's not, it doesn't get by me. Yes, I've got a big manual here, and I understand the rules. I have to sign my name to every product. And I know the FDA can come back in here and say, who made this valve 5 years later? Because I've signed my name personally to that product. She said, but, you know, I make 1,000 valves a year, more than anyone else in this facility. If one of those valves fails, someone's going to die. Now, to you at Medtronic, 99.9% quality is considered pretty darn good. But, you know, I could never live with that, knowing I led to the death of another person. So she said, but you know what I think about when I go home at night? I'm thinking about those 5,000 people who are alive and leading full lives in the world today because of the heart valves I made. Now, do any of you doubt that she's an empowered employee? Okay? She gets it, right? She's building a cathedral. She's not just laying bricks. She's not like the proverbial bricklayer. She's building a cathedral to save lives. Okay, but do any of you doubt she's an empowered leader? This woman has no direct reports. Okay? She has no direct reports, but who do you think people come to for quality advice? Who do they come to for inputs? Who do you think that does all the training for new employees coming into the company? Okay? You've got people like this all over Whole Foods. They don't have fancy titles, but they're the ones, they're the informed. They don't probably even show up on your organization chart. Never find them on an org chart, right? But they're the people that make the company go. And that's the kind of sense that you want to have, that everyone can have. They kind of get the bigger picture of what we're trying to do here. You know, my job is not just to, you know, stock the shelves or do whatever, check people out. There's a much bigger picture here. And if we can all get that essence, okay? I think, you know, you all understand what it's like to serve. At Medtronic, people would say, who's your customer? Is it the doctor or the patient? I said, the customer ultimately is the patient, because that's the people we're serving. Our job is not done Our job is not done until that person is restored to full life and they can live another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It's not done by putting a pacemaker or defibrillator in. It's not done. Your job is not done when I take my groceries out of the store. Okay? That's not the end of your job. Job is done when I'm having a good experience. I'm going to want to keep coming back. Okay? And I'm living a healthier life. That's when your job, and it's never done, but that's when it's well on its way. And that's how you see it. Every time one of you comes up and says, oh, thank you so much, Mr. George. My son had diabetes. He was born with diabetes. He has one of your pumps. He's doing, and my only question is not how's the pump working. It's what's his life? You know, how has it changed? How's he doing now? Is he able to leave? Can he play sports? Can he go out and play soccer in a contact sport? You know, can he do all these things that you want kids to be able to do? So, me, that's the essence of service. And our job, last we can think, you're the top manager of the company, is to think anyone's there to serve you. You're there to serve them. It's the upside-down organization, ultimately. And I always said, you know, our job is to make the job of the frontline people easier so they can do a better job of serving our customers. Yes, we need procedures. Yes, we have quality standards. Yes, we have accounting standards. We need all that stuff so that the checkout line works well. We want to make that job of the checkout clerk easy. I don't want to stand in line for 20 minutes. I'm very impatient. When I come into your store, I want to get through that line. And so I want you to design a simple, efficient checkout so you make that job so that person can be pleasant to me and not be fooling around with a system that takes 10, 15 minutes to get me through. And so that it goes really well. So that's, I think that's our job. We're there to serve. People are not there to serve us. We're there to serve. I heard a guy named Robert Gringley from AT&T who came up with the idea of servant leaders back in the 1960s, 66. Always got into that. You know, we're really servant leaders. We're there to serve. And you all, I really believe in the model of collaboration, and I can't talk too much about it because you all know it better than I do. But how do we get that now as we grow between people in the home office and the various functions and the people in the field organizations where the field is empowered to take and experiment with new ideas? How do we get the level of collaboration and esprit that goes throughout the organization? I refuse to say top to bottom, but throughout the organization. So we have that essence of collaboration throughout the... So as we bring new organizations in, like Medtronic acquiring new companies, how do we make them feel just as much a part of, like the third shift workers in Warsaw, Indiana, or a bunch of young people doing software in California. That's what I had to face at Medtronic. How do we bring them into the family, if you will, so that they really feel part of that and they don't go native on us. They don't say, oh, we do it different here. And I think that's your challenge as time goes on. And ultimately, I think this is all about performance. We have to perform. That's the bottom line. And I think some people look at a culture like we try to have a Medtronic like you have here as soft. You know, people used to say to me, Bill, that's the soft side of it. I said, nonsense. This is the hard side. What we're talking about here, this is hard. You know what's easy? Numbers right. We know how to get the numbers right. We just cut everyone's salary 10%, lay off 30% of the people, cut back, and Medtronic cut back in the R&D, sales and marketing. We'll get the numbers up. You destroy the place. And I've seen a lot of companies do that. But this is hard. Don't only want to tell you this is the soft side of leadership. This is the hard side of leadership, and it is really hard to sustain it, okay? Because as you grow, it becomes more difficult. So we have to perform. You know, we perform for our customers, perform for our employees, and ultimately we perform for our shareholders, okay? And so to me, that's the only way you can run a business. And you already run it, so I can't bring that to you and share that. So I think the challenge is now, how do I develop myself as a leader? What are you doing to develop yourself as a leader? You know, if you were an athlete, you wouldn't stop practicing, would you? If you were a musician, you're going to Carnegie Hall, you're playing the cello, you're not just going to show up. You're going to practice every day. Are you practicing your leadership today, tomorrow? Are you processing what you do? When you make mistakes, we all make mistakes. When you learn. You know, when I used to play tennis and I'd win, I didn't learn anything. When I lost, I'd say, oh my gosh, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let that person expose my weaknesses at the net. What am I going to do to correct it? It's the same thing with your leadership. How are you developing your leadership? And that's what I really want you all to think about is how do you go about doing that? And, I wrote a book, True North, some of you have seen it, that really describes the essence of your story. And we found that crucibles become very, very important. The difficult times you faced, And like one of the cases I teach on Howard Schultz is Starbucks. And one of the interesting things, Howard grew up as a poor kid in Brooklyn in the Bayview housing project. He never forgot the fact his father got fired 30 times from jobs. He had 30 rotten jobs. Okay, and Howard thought his father was a huge failure, so he ran away and went to northern Michigan to play football and lost his scholarship after a year because he just wanted to escape. He said the saddest day of his life was the day that his father died because he realized his father never had a shot, never had a chance. And that's when Howard said he wanted to create Starbucks. He wanted to create the dream of a place his father would be proud to work. And 100,000 people like his father would be proud to work, and that's what he's done. And so his dream is to create this great place where you have a relationship between the employees and the customers, not unlike what you're trying to do. But you know, Howard also has a fear gene, okay? There's two narratives competing. There's the dream. I have it too, by the way. There's the dream narrative, and then there's the fear narrative, you know? And his fear is failure. I'm going to fail, just like my father did. When he saw the company going down, and by the way, he participated in all the decisions that were causing Starbucks to lose it. They were growing so fast, we're losing sight of the essence of creating a coffee house, the place you wanted to go on a coffee break. And all of a sudden, he put this machine from you, and you couldn't see the person who was supposed to be so nice to you behind the, you know, making your coffee. And it was like an assembly line. You might as well go to McDonald's and they just throw it at you, you know. And so, a simple thing. Can you imagine how simple that decision was? I talked to the guy that recommended that to Howard. He said, Howard, if you want us to grow, you got to automate the coffee process. You know, they did. And in that simple decision, they separated the people from the baristas. And so it can be that simple. And yeah, you can say it was unfair. He went back in and fired his successor and all that. But, you know, he had to go back in. See, he has these dueling narratives of the positive narrative, the dream, but also the failure narrative. Now, in my case, what I've always felt is I can make something better. I can go into something and help create something here. I love to build things. I don't like tearing things apart, but I do it. I know how, if I have to, do turnarounds and things like that, but that's not where I want to spend my life. But I also have, my negative narrative, not failure, because I feel like I dissociated that. If we actually had a failure, if we tried something, it didn't work. I actually had a company we acquired in Medtronic. We actually found out they were committed fraud in the FDA, and I shut the whole thing down. Wrote off $70 million. Did I fail? Well, yeah, we failed to do the due diligence, but I didn't take that as a personal failure. We just made the decision. Bad things happen, and we did the right thing. But my fear is rejection. I'm afraid you all are going to reject me. Why? Because when I was a kid, I was trying so hard to be a leader that I ran for office 7 times and lost 7 times in a row in high school and college. And I was widely rejected. And, you know, I used to call girls up for dates, and they'd turn me down. You know, I'd see them at the drugstore with their girlfriends, you know. And so I have a fear of being rejected by my students, by people I interact with. And it's really interesting. It's never gone away, you know. So think about your own case. If you have these dueling narratives, you know, a positive narrative, a negative narrative, and how you put that together with your life story, which is your essence. And what are your difficult times? There are difficult times, we call it crucibles, a time when you really come to the fore. You all had a business crisis like this, you know, in 2008, when stock bottom falls out. But you also have personal time. One of my personal times came in, I'm an only child, and I was very close to my mother, never close to my father. And I got a call. I'm working in Washington, D.C., in the Department of Defense, right out of school, during the Vietnam War, thinking I'm doing good work. And I get a call. I'm sitting in the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force's office. My father calls. They call me out. Find out my mother died of a heart attack that day. I was an only child, very, very close to my mother, and I was just devastated. So I recovered from my mother's death about 18 months, over the next 18 months. Fell in love in that time period, got engaged to be married. And I'm 3 weeks to the day before my wedding. My fiancée has gone back to Georgia to prepare for the wedding, work with her family in Macon, Georgia. And her parents called me on a Sunday morning, 7 o'clock, to say she died during the night of a malignant brain tumor. Totally undiagnosed. She had headaches, but, you know, and I was just like, you know, I could explain my mother's death in terms of in terms of, you know, it's a natural process. You hate to lose a parent, but it is still the natural process of things. When somebody is 25 years old, who's doing really great work in the world, in the Appalachia Regional Commission, disappears, you know, and I always felt so alone because these are two people I'd been closest to. And it really caused me to do a tremendous amount of soul searching of what life was all about. And the thing that I took away from that is none of us knows how long we have. You know, none of us knows how long we have on this earth. And I've been trying to change the world, and I said, Bill, you can't change the world. Just work, just be a positive force in the environment you're in today. And maybe the accumulation of that will have a big positive impact on the world. Be a positive force, because that's all you can do, is have an impact on the people you're with. And it really caused me to reflect on that. I'm a person of faith. My faith was there for me. And I can't explain this to you, but I can tell you in a quite short period of time, a friend had a dinner party for my former fiance, deceased fiance's friends, and me, had an empty place at the table, invited a person, and I was living in Washington at the time, to come, and turned out to be my wife Penny, and we've been together ever since for 42 years. So I can't explain all this in religious or spiritual or ethereal terms, but all I can say is sometimes one door closes in life and another door opens. But if you have to deal with those tough times in life. We can't go through life without dealing with hard times, personally and professionally. I had an experience I shared last night of when I hit the wall at Honeywell. And it just wasn't the place I wanted to be, but I was moving so fast I couldn't see it. Only because I hit the wall, you know, and I realized I was losing sight of my true north. You know, I was working so hard to become CEO of Honeywell that I was dressing just right, acting just right, saying the right thing, trying to impress the board of directors, trying to impress top management. I was losing who I was. My wife was trying to tell me I'd flying all over the country, had 8 divisions outside of Minneapolis where I lived. It was crazy. And I was really losing it. But I thought I was getting ahead, you know, and all I have to do is get to that point where I can run the whole company and then everything will be fine. No, it wouldn't be fine. Because it wasn't the right culture. It wasn't the right place. But I couldn't see that. My wife's trying to tell me. And I had blind spots. And you have blind spots where you can't see yourself as you really are. And sometimes the people closest to you are the ones that help you see yourself as you really are. And they kind of hold that mirror up to your face. So do you look yourself in the mirror and look at the real person? Or like Narcissus, do you look at that pool of water and say, God, I'm good looking, you know? Do you see yourself as you really are? And some need people around us who are close to us to do that, who can help us see ourselves as we are. To be real, to be authentic every day. And when you're losing it a little, and it's okay, people say this person, perfect. Yes, none of us is perfectly authentic, okay? All of us do things we're not proud of, we're not happy with, you know, we're not real. We hurt someone's feelings. I say something to you and I'm afraid you're going to reject me because I hurt your feelings. I feel terrible about that because sometimes I lack tact. Sometimes I'm just moving too fast. I'm impatient with you. And I almost am dismissive. You know, I'm not proud of that, you know. But we all have these characteristics. Who around you? Who are your truth tellers? Who are the people that call you and say, hey, you're losing it here. You got these blind spots. How do you open up to the real person? How can you open yourself up to being real? I think that's how you become authentic, and that's how you grow as a leader. Yes, we have to learn managerial skills, but that's a different field. But as a leader, we have to work on being a better leader every day, being more authentic. And to do that, I think we need people around us that keep us on track. We need mentors. I think I hope all of you have at least one person in your life with whom you can be totally gut level honest. There's nothing you can't say. You may be ashamed of it, but you can go home and say, I'm so ashamed I did this today. You know, who's that person in your life? And do you have mentors that care more about you than they care about you emulating them? And one of the things we've done that's been the most impactful things I've done in my life, and now we've had 1,600 people at Harvard Business School do it, is creating small groups. We call them True North groups. That's the new book that I just wrote. Again, I'm not promoting books, but it is a way to kind of put this together of what, why you need a small group in your life. And I hope all of you have. Who do you turn to when things aren't going your way? Who's there for you? When my fiance passed away, or my wife had breast cancer, who do I go talk to? I can guarantee you, I've got 2,500 people on Facebook that I'm in touch with. You think I'm going to put this out on Facebook? Oh, I just thought I'd let you know I need your help. Anyone help me? My wife just had breast cancer, you know, or I just got fired from my job, or I'm unhappy. in this. You know, I've got this problem with my son or my daughter. You know, no, you don't do that. Who are the people you really talk to about what's really important in your life? I think we need that kind of support group around us to help keep us real, where you can have an honest conversation. If nothing more, we need to have those honest conversations every day, because no matter how authentic you think you are, we can all go off, like I've gone off several times in my life, and get too caught up in running so hard. I'm teaching at Harvard Business School, living in Minneapolis, and going. You know, you can hear the repeats in my life needing to ground it. So how do you stay grounded in your life? How do you stay real? What are your personal practices? What are those practices you have? I met John's wife last night. She teaches yoga. My son's been trying to get me more into yoga. Okay, this is a practice. I like to jog. That's a practice. I like to hike in the wilderness in the mountains of Colorado. I like to bike. You know, I meditate 20 minutes. I say, what are your practices? You know, what are the practices you have to stay real, to stay grounded? Because if you get so caught up in doing your work, what can happen is you can lose it. And so I think the real test, and we're talking about this over breakfast, is can you be the same person at home, at work, in your community, and in your personal life? I can tell you in my 30s, I was anything but that. Yeah, I had compartmentalizing my life like a house. You know, I'd go from the living room and to my office to, you know, to the family room, to the personal room. And I said, you know, I got to knock off all these walls in my life. Okay? And I got to just be the same person wherever I am. How do you do that? How do you ensure that you can be? And I think that's having an integrated life. That's really what it's all about. There's no such thing as perfect work and home life balance. But how do you have an integrated life so you can be that same person in every aspect of your life? And that's the challenge I'd like to leave you with, of how you become that authentic leader. You still have to learn the managerial skills, but how you become that authentic leader, it's you have a high level of self-awareness, and you're getting that feedback every day. You practice your values. You realize when you've gone off. You focus. You have those personal practices that help you stay grounded, and you have people around you that can be real and have honest conversations. You have a small group, and at the end of the day, you work at being that same person in every aspect of your life. So I'll just close with this. 3 comments from Steve Jobs, which I think are really kind of the essence of everything I've been trying to do for the last 30 years. The first is, life is short. Don't waste it living somebody else's life. Too much of my life I was tracking what my father wanted me to do for me, like work for a big company. Okay? Second one is, don't let the noise of other people's opinions crowd out your inner voice. Let your inner voice speak to you. And third, have the courage to follow your heart and your intuition. And if you can do those 3 things, you'll be a very authentic leader. I think you'll have a very authentic life. So let's take some questions. Anyone got questions? Okay.
All right. Do we have any questions to start with? We'll take a few questions, and then we're going to take a quick break for WFLN to go back to their meeting, and then we'll continue with the Q&A. Does anybody have anything to start with?
Okay, whoever asked the first question.
I'll start with one.
Okay.
So you'd mentioned, True North.
Yeah.
And I understand, as you're kind of navigating through the journey of life, you have these pegs out there to navigate towards to find your true north. What do you think about when you're making decisions on the very close pegs and your day-to-day decisions to try to make sure that you're steering in the right direction?
Yeah. Well, I think you always want to bounce those off in the back of your mind or in the front of your mind. What you believe, your beliefs, your values. Is this consistent? You want to ask yourself that question. Is it consistent with what I believe? Is it consistent with my values? Is it consistent with the company's values? Is it? Is it not? Am I cutting some corners because I got to make the numbers this quarter, this month? I got to do this to get whatever it is, I got to get this done. Is it consistent with that? And then have these truth tellers around you. Ask them. Have people you can talk to. I think one of the problems we have in our organization, we don't have honest conversations. I think you probably do here, but so much of life we don't. We don't feel we can be really honest and say, I'm scared. I don't know. What's going to happen? I could lose my job. I could get fired. We got a problem here, or whatever. I think it's having that, You know, make a list of those questions, put them in front of you on your desk or something, but so you're really always processing that. So it's not just, okay, this is my personal life over here, this is my business life, I'm making a decision over here, and now I go back to being real, you know, so that these things bounce off each other.
You have time for one more before we need to break?
Please. You are a very good active listener.
So one of the things I was thinking about is, as you talk about your daily practices, is the discipline of creating sort of the bigger moments actively, rather than waiting for a point of failure to create a paradigm shift. I'm curious if those are disciplines that you've sort of got some best practices that you might share. Are there ways that you pull yourself out of it in order to sort of get to those bigger moments?
Well, for me, it's having people I can talk to all the time. Like every night, Penny and I get together, even like we were together last night, we talk and we process these things. We talk about some of those challenges, what went wrong, what didn't go right. So we're processing all the time. I have this men's group, and I also have a couples group that I meet with on a regular basis, once a week for the men's group and once for the couples group. And every Wednesday morning we meet and we talk about these issues. And by able to do that, that kind of brings you grounded and real. And so, other than just trying to do it on your own, I find in meditating, for me, it helps flush through the important things from the unimportant things. So I like to meditate, because it's the one thing that I tend to be quite impatient and move too fast, as you can tell. And I try to, it helps me get centered and get grounded. And what happens in a kind of magical way during this 20 minutes is that I can't explain why, but the important things are there and the other things kind of wash away. Do you see what I mean? The little things that are kind of nagging in the back of your mind, they kind of wash away and you get focused on, here's what's important. You can stay present. And I think one of the things we want to have in an organization like this is, I said once to our health people, they didn't even respond to it, the health plans. I said, our goal is not to have the lowest health care costs. Our goal is to have 100% of our employees fully present on the job every day. I know we'll never achieve that, but fully present means I'm there with you. I'm not so worried about my sick child at home and I have no help for my child and I've got to get out of here and go see. You know what I mean? I've got help. And so how do you stay grounded? That's what jogging does for me, or hiking. It kind of clears the things, and then I get focused on. And I find when I do those things, my thinking is much clearer, my relationships are much better, and I'm much more effective. And I may not get as many things done on my list of 100, but those 5 or 10, and the relationships are much better, and people, then we're able to move together ahead, and I don't make as many of the mistakes I've told you I make, or to mitigate some of my weaknesses. Makes them go into the background. So I think staying grounded in your life is something we have to work on every day of our lives. And that's part of our growth process as we do that, because then we can take on greater challenges because we feel secure in ourselves and we feel grounded. And when you see people losing their way, it's because they got kind of caught up in all the external glamour of life, and whatever it is, money, fame, status, power, glory, adoration, they stay grounded in what's really important to them. They weren't trying to emulate someone else, and they became real, and to other people saw them that way, and they could grow from that grounded base and become much more effective, much more impactful in whatever their goals or whatever your goals. So that's my hope for you, is that each of you can find out you have great gifts that you were given at birth. How do you develop your gifts so that you can use those to have the most positive impact on the world as you go through life, through the journey of life? And when you hit difficult times, you'll be grounded enough to deal with that so that you can have a great impact, and together we can have an impact on the world that makes this world a better place.